you this morning about building relationships and networking, I thought let's get a little more specific, because what I'm hoping this morning after my presentation is you're going to have a different idea and maybe a different focus in how you network, because what I want to talk about this morning is when you're networking, how can you maybe shift your focus less on thinking about getting direct business, all right? And I'll tell you the reasons why in a minute, and more focus on how you build partnerships, strategic alliances, and find value to get introductions and referrals through other people. Anybody feel like you've got that mastered in the room? Not one hand. Wow. Okay. So I'm hoping that, okay, one, you do? Woo! Okay, give her a woo. You just wanted to kind of get that going? All right, I like that. I always get the one person that's going to be in the room, that's going to be, now if you heckle, we got issues. You know what I'm saying? But I talk really fast, so one of the things that I want to kind of do is just go through some fundamentals. But what I want to start with, and I know this is a lot at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday morning, is I want you to share with me what are some of the things you hate about networking. You know, not in crew, I know, because crew is fabulous, crew is wonderful, but what are some of the things that you're frustrated with? I was having a conversation with somebody and she was like, I don't like the booze and schmoozes where I'm hit on as a woman when I network. Okay, we got the groans, right? If you're a pretty girl, hello, you're gonna be hit on when you're like having cocktails. But what are some things you don't like about networking? I'm just curious. Shout it out. Kelly, go for it, girl.
The chitter chatter small talk.
Chitter chatter. What is chitter chatter small talk to you?
The weather. Oh my God, it's totally right. It's like really, if we're going back to the fact we don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And so, to me, when you network, you're trying to create a relationship, and creating a relationship is not really talking about weather, but you have to do it in order to get to that next.
Or traffic. You know, traffic's another big one, right? Oh, I just got here. Traffic's horrible. I agree with you. The chitter chatter. And there's a way you can control that. So if you hate it, through your conversation, you can control that. But that's a good one. What else? Yes, ma'am. What is your first name?
Katie.
Katie, hey.
I guess I don't like the wheeling and dealing.
And what do you mean by wheeling and
I had a
dealing?
project manager that used to tell me, like, if you're going to get a meeting with someone, you need to bring something to the table, which I agree, but he would bring, like, fake stuff just to get to the table, and that, like, that made me uncomfortable, you know, like, someone acting like, oh, we have a project to tell you about, or we have a, you know, something happening that you might want to know about, and then, but it's not real.
Like a bait and switch?
Like, yeah.
God, that almost feels sleazy almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sleazy side of it, I guess.
Okay, and that was the follow-up from meeting someone and they kind of built themselves to come to the table and then it wasn't what you thought.
Exactly.
Interesting, okay, I like that one. That sucks. Okay, sorry, oops, that's being videotaped. Sucks! Don't swear, we're being videotaped. What's another one? What do you not like about networking?
Well, I think on top of what Katie said, the wheeling dealing is that when you meet somebody, they immediately want to go right in for
The kill.
the kill. And I think I like to build trusted relationships and feel comfortable with people before kind of going and say we want to work together. So I really, you know, kind of it's a turn off when you meet people. They immediately want to, let's do this right now, you know. So I think you've got to get to know people and build a trusted relationship.
Ding, ding. And you'll love, and this is the nice part about women, is women like to kind of build those relationships over time. So you'll love what we talk about tonight, or this morning, it's not tonight, but when men are different than women are in terms of how they network. Men are like, get to the point, you know, go for the kill. So there's just a different way even between men and women in how they network. But good one. What else? One more, two more, come on. What don't you like about networking? I'm looking for one thing that nobody's brought up. Yeah.
Well, I'm a mother of two and very busy, like I'm sure many women here. And sometimes, you know, just narrowing down what events to go to,
Yes.
like the value of spending your time, because it's time away from your family, and you know, so it's like, well, what can I be involved with that one I'm going to enjoy, two I'm going to build meaningful relationships that are going to eventually lead to something like Tiffany said, where it's authentic relationships where you build up trust and it leads to business. That's what I'm looking for. So I don't want to just go to every event because I feel like I'm just taking time away from my kids. So why would I do that?
And you could breakfast, lunch, dinner, and in between network, right?
All day.
And that is one of the things I will say that, you know, from networking, it just seems to me that people don't have what I kind of call a strategy to building relationships. It's kind of like, oh, here's what looks like a great event. Here looks like a great event. So I'm hoping this morning I'll go through and kind of make some recommendations in some places where you want to kind of be a little more strategic. How do you determine the worthiness of a group? How can you go in, you know, kind of look at a group and be able to say, you know what, there's opportunity here. And just as you guys have said, it doesn't happen in one instance, and we'll talk about some of those things. But I love hearing about the challenges of networking because I hope at the end of this morning, you're gonna kind of think about networking in a different way. Because the one thing I didn't hear from anybody that I typically always hear is people go, I network and it doesn't produce any results. I network and I network and I network and I don't get any business. And I'm like, really? And I will tell you, it's like, flip it. I mean, 20 years I've been doing this, and it's like, I mean, I'm a little bit engaging. You know, I love people. It's like I like to interact. I love the chit chat. Sorry, Kelly. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about how are you? Do you have kids? Are you married? I mean, I've got the whole DNA by the time I'm done with somebody. And then I can go, okay, I'm not interested in working with them, or I am. But those are some of the things that when you network, it's like I want you to look at networking a little differently to be able to say you can be strategic, just like in your business plan of where you go get business. I want you to think about the people relationships, the people that you're interacting with, but I want you to think about networking a little differently, not to get direct business, but how you can start to build partnerships with other people that are like-minded, like-focused, that you can bring value to them and they can bring value to you, because this is where the $1 million opportunities of networking are, that most people do this very passively. They do it by accident, and it kind of like just happens. So you are more than welcome to ask questions. I hope you guys will take notes. If any of you guys want my PowerPoint slides, because Lindsay has already said she wanted me to videotape it, Lindsay Smith, you know her, cutie patootie. She said, Michelle, I won't be there. Can you video, or can you audio tape it? I said, I'll do it better. We'll videotape it. So I am happy to send the slides, but I hope you guys will take notes and ask questions. So I've got an hour, but shout it out if you've got any questions as we go along, because I've had a lot of coffee. Are you ready to go? Yay! Okay. The first thing about building strategic alliances and partnerships is you have to be open to partnership. I know maybe you're going, oh, this is dumb, Michelle, this is so basic. But when you think about being open to partnership, it means that you're starting to think in terms of, as a partner means it's a two-way street. Open to partnership means not only are you going for the get, which is what somebody can bring value to you, but you need to be thinking in terms of what do you bring to the table to be able to create value and opportunity for someone else. And it's not always about giving up names and phone numbers and client relationships. It can be other things that you can bring to the table. But I want you to think of maybe individuals, no one in this room I know, because if you're a crew member, you're not like this, but in other organizations like chambers of commerce or business professionals you've met, you can tell and get a sense that they're not open to partnership, and it's all about them. If you're an all about you kind of person, you might as well just leave right now, because this is not really where you're going to find value. You have to be open to the idea that in order for you to get value and for you to get new business in a different way, through referrals, through introductions, through strategic alliances, you've got to bring something to the table as well and give in order to get. Does that make sense? So you got to give to get. That means if you have that kind of open understanding. The other thing that's important before you even start looking at building strategic relationships is you've got to kind of do this little kind of like thumbprint that says, how is brand you? When you kind of like have a meeting with yourself, to yourself, about yourself, you want to ask yourself, it's like, what's your reputation like? You know, what do people think of you? I mean, in terms of if someone says, like if we say Lindsay, right, we're going to unpack Lindsay and she has no idea this morning, but when we talk about Lindsay Smith, I mean, I'm thinking bubbly, energetic, it's like, you know, always strives to be able to support and help other people. I've kind of gotten to know her over a while because she's one of our members in Connected Women of Influence, and she's a giver. And that to me is her reputation. So you've got to ask yourself, what's your reputation like? I mean, are you known as somebody who follows through on what they say they're going to do? Are you somebody that, you know, when you commit, it's like you get it done? Are you always a day late, $1 short? I mean, do you have the reputation where it's like, oh, they're all about themselves? That can hurt your opportunity to be able to build relationships through strategic alliances. So it's just kind of that thumbprint to say, are you open to partnership? Are you ready to be able to take on partners? And at the same time, you know, do you have the reputation, or could you change a few things so that you are actually being looked upon and having the reputation of more of a giver? In talking to a lot of you this morning, I think these things are kind of like standard. So the big thing to look at, and this is now where you want to set the stage and say to yourself, okay, now there's analysis. And this is where you want to say to yourself, what do you have that you can bring to the table? Because before you start to go out and network and build relationships and start to think in terms of giving so you can get, you got to ask yourself, who do you know? You know, when you look at the client relationships you have, the associations and kind of, you know, relationships you have within crew, other organizations that you maybe belong to, you've got to kind of know what your inventory of connections are before you start networking with other people. And what most people do is when you first start in business, you go out and they tell you, go network. And so you're just kind of running amok. I don't know if any of you were like that, but when I left banking in the early 90s, it was like, just go network. And I was like, what? What's this thing called networking? So I went out and I did it. And you were like, all these coffee meetings, all these lunch meetings. It was kind of random, you know, things that you were meeting for people. And you want to have kind of like a game plan with that. And one of the biggest game plans that you want to have as far as your arsenal is to know what you bring to the table in terms of connection. So I always suggest to clients, and I do a lot of in-house training for sales companies, is we'll start with their sales professionals and I'll say, who do you know? What kind of associations do you belong to? Those are people that you might be able to introduce potential strategic alliances to. What kind of clients do you work with? Who's the contact or the relationship that you work with within the organization that you have somewhat of a relationship? Who are some of your friends and colleagues that you network with and hang around with so that you have almost your inventory that you know that you can unpack. If somebody says, I'm looking to be able to meet these kind of people, you've got to ask yourself, do I know those kind of individuals, so that you can create opportunity for the other person. Is this making sense at 8 o'clock in the morning? Just give me a nod. Okay, if anybody falls asleep, I promise I will call on you, just so you know. Next thing, okay, once you kind of know what you bring to the table, now you got to take a look and say, who do you know in terms of your circle of influence, your circle of contacts? And when you start thinking very specifically about what you bring to the table, maybe you kind of look at the vendor relationships that you have. You know, I know for some of you, it's like maybe you're not out calling on clients, but you know some of the different suppliers or vendors that you work with, that those people can be pretty powerful connections to other people. Maybe it's former colleagues, you know, from a former work relationship, you know, colleagues or coworkers that you used to work with. I mean, there's so many different places that you can pull from that can be kind of your inventory of opportunity to know that you can bring that to the table for strategic alliances. Most people just think of, oh, I'm going to have to give up my client information, and you don't. There's so many other ways when you're networking, when you want to sit down with somebody and say, how can I provide you value and opportunity? It all starts with assessing who you know. The next thing you want to look at, and this is again, how many of you guys are all in business development? You're out there calling on, show of hands. Okay, raise your hands high because I want to see who's not in business development. Okay, just a few of you guys. So for those of you in business development, this should pretty much be an easy task, but most sales professionals don't look at what they do and who they are as the situations and the things that occur when they're working with their clients and customers. And when you start thinking of what you come across in terms of knowledge, that could be areas of opportunity where you could refer to other people. And I'm setting you up to have you think about what you bring to the table before you ever start talking to people as strategic alliances. So when you look at your kind of circle of knowledge, you want to ask yourself, what kind of things happen as you interact with your customers and your clients? I mean, do you see things when you're working with your clients about some of their pains, their frustrations, services type things that they give you knowledge about? And so I'm going to ask you guys, for those of you in here that are commercial real estate brokers, when you're interacting with a client who is going to be a new tenant, they're buying a building, whatever it is, what are some of the situations that you come across that you see in working with a company or an organization? I mean, what kind of things are going on? What are they preparing to do if they've just bought a building or they're getting ready to take on a new commercial location? What's going on in the company that you're working with? Any ideas? This is where you talk and I listen. Just checking. Any thoughts? Panic? Okay. Now, can panic on what things? I'm curious.
Just how are they going to get it done?
Yeah.
You know, and going back to everyone they have a full-time job, so now all of a sudden they're adding additional stress not only onto their shoulders, but onto their staff's shoulders. And so how are they going to be able to get this done without impacting the bottom line?
And panic could be organizing the move. Panic can be all the technology that goes on with making the big transition, correct? I mean, are there other specific things? Okay.
And unknowns, you know, we as in commercial real estate sector, we deal with real estate every day. It is our job, but I think at times we tend to forget that's not everyone else's job.
And the cool part about this, if you guys really think of what's going on with your clients when you're working and interacting with them, is there's a lot of power there to know what panic is going on. And the panic becomes opportunity for you to be known as the trusted advisor, that when you hear some of those things with your clients, and we'll get into how you choose strategic alliances, but if you start thinking about situations, occurrences, frustrations, struggles that are going on with your clients when you're interacting with them, that becomes an opportunity for you to start thinking about other service providers that could be strategic alliances or referral partners that you recommend or bring to the table. Because if you have a client that's dealing with panic and they say, oh man, you know, we're so worried about, you know, this big move, and it's like, you know, our technology to get the infrastructure up, you know, right, or the move as far as boxing everything up and getting it to the new location. I mean, are those some of the things, Kelly, that you hear about?
Right, and then how are we going to design it?
Okay. And do you...
Tiffany, I know you deal with that.
Is that what you do, Tiffany? So for you guys would be good power partners then for you to be the hero that comes in. You already are? Okay. So, but those are the things I'm talking about, that when you start looking at those situations, I have a client that they sell photocopiers, and you're thinking, oh man, what possibilities could you see from photocopier sales? But when you're a photocopier salesperson, you're all about document management. I mean, that's the new buzz term, right? So they're in there in a company and they're setting up a photocopier, but in the process of doing that, they're asking the company about what their workflow is like. What are the things going on in the company that are pains or frustrations in terms of just, operational type activities to keep things moving smoothly and flowing well. And so this copier, person that it's like I'm talking about gets in there, and she has a questionnaire now that she'll go through and she'll ask people. It's like, okay, so is this a challenge? Is this a challenge? Is this seamless? Is this working well? And based on that questionnaire that she does with her clients on these different things, who she's working with, she has built herself a questionnaire of referral partners that what she does is if any sort of frustration comes out of the questionnaire, she goes, I'd love to recommend a wonderful service provider for you because they might be able to help or assist you with that. I mean, in a trusted advisor scenario, if you look at yourself as kind of that power situation, this gives you the foundation to be a very powerful strategic alliance with the people that you can introduce. So I just hope you guys will think of, when are you brought in to serve? What's going on with the clients? What are trigger events that cause, you to be brought in to serve, but maybe trigger events where you see things that you could look for other service providers and partner with them so that you can bring value to them and vice versa, if they can be on the lookout for situations where you're brought in. So these are just some questions for you to think about so that basically when you start looking at building referral partners and networking, now you've got some things where you can go, this is what I can bring to the table. Got it? Everybody go, yeah, got it. You guys awake? We're good? Do I need to do some yeehaws? Or okay, Kelly's going, yeah, baby. All right. The next thing, and this is the part where I think all of you, and this is what Kelly and Lindsay asked me to come in and talk about, is how do you find strategic alliances? You guys are involved in Crew, and I'm happy to hear that you two already are power partners. But there's places where instead of looking at organizations and associations and chambers of commerce and leads group, where you go and just network to be able to find direct business, here's kind of the sad reality of networking, and I think most of you will agree with me, is that many decision makers of companies, CFOs, chief executive officers, owners of companies, heads of HR, heads of administration, they don't really network. Would you agree? So all your networking, in my mind, is for naught, because everybody says you gotta network. So I find people that I work with, they go out, they're belonging to trade associations that are their target market. And yet, who do they meet when they go to their trade association? Other sales representatives, right? And you're like, but I don't sell to you. You're not a target for me. So I want you to shift your networking, and what I want you to think about in your mindset is for you to really think more of, if you visualize and say to yourself, everybody in an association, in an organization, even within Crew, most of you guys are looking to sell something to somebody else. Would you agree? I mean, probably 80-90% of everybody in the room, in the membership. And if you look at that, everybody's in conflict because you're all trying to sell something to each other, including the affiliates that are in Crew. So any organization you belong to, if you would look at it less on trying to find direct business and more on trying to find very like-minded strategic alliances, now your networking becomes amazingly more powerful. Because if your mindset shifts, that when you go to a chamber of commerce, you're looking through conversation of when you network, now you have a strategy, folks. As you go to a chamber of commerce, you're gonna network with people and you're gonna say things like, Tamara, who are the type of clients you work with? I mean, that's a nice question to ask someone, right? At a chamber of commerce, who do you work with? What type of business are you? How can I keep my eyes and ears open for something that would be a good prospect for you? And all of a sudden, through that quick conversation, you're focused less on you telling somebody what you do, and your focus of your conversation is more to ask them questions, because what you're doing, I'm going to give you a kind of like icky visual, but you're sniffing for opportunity here. And you're wanting to find out through Tamara and me conversing, one, can I support you? And number two, mostly important, but I'm not going to share it. I'm going to keep it behind my, behind when I do the happy dance, which is, can you support me? Can you do something for me because we have some sort of like focus? So now when you're networking, your questions are going to be centered on, who do you work with? Who do you know? Who do you serve? How can I be a lookout for you? And then you move on. And your goal is to meet maybe 5 to 10 people, quality, quick relationships that then you can follow up with people after. So in all your networking, what I would recommend is, how many of you belong to a chamber of commerce? More than one chamber of commerce. I see people that have 5 and they go, I get no business out of it. I'm like, you probably want to belong to one. So if you don't belong to a chamber of commerce, I mean, the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce is huge. Carlsbad is the 2nd largest chamber in the city, but it really comes down to who's your target market. But I believe everyone in business, if you're in business development, should belong to one chamber of commerce, because they're based on that kind of geographic area that all kinds of businesses will come there. But your job in networking is not to try to meet everybody. Let me ask you guys this question. How many of you meet people at a chamber meeting or wherever and you go network, and afterwards you start getting phone calls or emails where people say, can we have a cup of coffee because I want to learn more about you and what you do? Do you love those emails? Kelly, you're laughing over there. Do you get those? Can we have a cup of coffee? Can we get together for lunch? Because I really want to know more about you. And do you believe it?
I believe it. Actually, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I do as well. It's much easier. Yeah.
If it's sincere, I mean, you can tell.
It's going back to time.
It is totally time, and this is where one of the things you want to look at, and if anyone wants to have a private conversation, I am more than happy to share the things that you can say to get out of meeting with someone. But when someone follows up with you, if you've met them, you remember them, and you think that there's some good synergy, then that makes sense to sit down and have a cup of coffee. But again, when we get to kind of the pieces where you've got to be more strategic about who you spend your time with, because none of us have time. So in a Chamber of Commerce meeting or any sort of association, when somebody says, let's have a cup of coffee, I always would recommend that it's like you start with, if you haven't had a conversation with somebody to determine that you think there's potential with the two of you, then it probably doesn't make sense for you to spend that quality time to sit down with them unless they are high potential for you to build a partnership with. Does that make sense? So it has to be who they focus on for business. It has to be who they serve that matches up with you, or it really is kind of a crapshoot whether the opportunity will come. Question?
Well, I was just
Tiffany.
going to add to that, one of the things that I've done to get out of that sometimes is that sometimes when you talk to people, you might connect them with someone else that you know. So
True.
Oftentimes I'll say, well, why don't we have a cup of coffee? I'm going to introduce you to so-and-so, because I really think that they might be a really great, really great partnership for you. So I'll introduce them to somebody else, then kind of pass them off, because then to somebody that might actually be beneficial to them and not then take up more of my time.
You are way too nice. But here's where you have to think about it. If you're going to spend the time to have a cup of coffee or lunch with someone, that is prime time that if you're being nice that way, see, to me, that's kind of like the guilt side. I mean, for all of us, we have to produce in business, correct? So you've got to really look at where's high potential versus maybe, and then there's the ones that are kind of like crapshoots that you never know how those are going to perform. You just can't meet with everyone like that. So if you can spend the time and you're going to be that nice, I think you're given more to the relationship than really there's opportunity for. So you might, if time is not of your leisure like that, is maybe look at being more a phone call to start with and say, let's start with a phone call. You can always say I'm way too busy. Aren't you guys all too busy? So you've got to kind of shorten that curve. So don't be so nice. That's a horrible statement to say, isn't it? It's like you're lovely, you're wonderful, but you've got to manage your time so you can produce. That's what we're all supposed to do. Let me comment on a couple of other things, because community events, maybe, I don't know if any of you guys have been involved in community events, but what I would recommend is every single professional needs to be in at least one leads group. A referral group, we'll talk about building a strategic alliance group, but something where it's like you're bringing value to the table, you're looking for leads and opportunities, you've got to belong to like a leads group or referral group. Chamber of Commerce is important. I believe a lot in trade associations like this one that are industry specific, membership organizations that are geared for a very specific target market. And then other type networking groups, you've got to kind of determine the value of who the members are and who the people are, if they're going to be potential strategic alliances or not. But you don't want just one thing. You don't want too many of one type of group, but one chamber, at least one trade association, depending on your target market. I think for a lot of you in crew, it's like this is your professional trade group for you to develop as a professional. So it may not be the place where it's like you build strategic alliances as much, because you're learning about the trade of commercial real estate. But these are all parts of your arsenal to get involved. Now I'm going to talk through the people that you should look at and the people that you want to kind of look at characteristics of whether they're a good fit for you. So Tiffany, pay attention. So first of all, the time on your side. You want to be thinking here, are you like-minded? When you meet people, not only is it important for you to know, do they target the same companies, same types of businesses that you do, you've got to ask yourself, it's like, do we have a good fit? Do we have a good connection? Are your personalities similar where you feel like you can kind of like, you know, play in the same sandbox? I mean, think of yourself as a child, that there were certain kids you liked, and there were certain ones you're like, I'm not sure if I really like these people, right? And you've got to do the same thing in networking. You can't force the opportunity. There's got to be kind of that good chemistry and that good fit. So this is where when you sit down with somebody after you meet them, your goal is to be able to say, it's like, I think we have a like focus, which might be your target market together. Maybe you both target property owners, whatever it is, building owners. But you want to look and say to yourself, do they kind of have a similar characteristic? Do we feel like there's a connection that I kind of like them, they like me? Do you understand what I'm saying as far as chemistry? Because if the fit isn't good, move on. It's just, you can't force whether you're going to have a strong personality connection or whether there's going to be a good chemistry. So this is kind of one of those fundamental criteria that you've got to look at and say, if it just doesn't feel right, it's not going to be right. And you've got to move on, because the idea here is that you want to build a very specific team of people that like-minded, like-focused, you have some good chemistry with. In addition to that, you want to be thinking, and this is where, again, I deal with sales professionals all day long, that they get all stressed out because they're thinking to themselves, if I'm going to go out and build strategic alliances, then I'm going to look at this as my customer development. So I'm going to go out and try to find hundreds of strategic alliances. And my message to you this morning is that make it simpler for yourself. Focus on quality, not quantity, and you want to have maybe 3, 5, or 7 very specific strategic alliances that you have a good fit, they like you like them, like targeted. And I always like to think under 10 relationships. I mean, can you imagine, and I'm just kind of curious, if you had 3 or 5 very specific business relationships with professionals, whether they're women or men, that you have a bond with, that they have your back, you have theirs, they're referring to you, you're referring to them, would that change your business and how you do what you do? In a huge way, right? But yet so many professionals will think, I need to still go out and network and find hundreds of strategic alliances. Referral partners and strategic alliances are usually, you can count them on about one hand. And those are the people that you really have a strong bond with. And I say really start with 3 or 5. If you're focused on more than that, you're wasting your time, because you can't have quality relationships with more than that. So good chemistry, high quality in terms of, as opposed to quantity. I've been talking about the like targeted piece for strategic alliances. And what I want you to think about is that in your conversation when you're networking, it's important to know that if you're going to spend time to get to know somebody and build a relationship when you're networking, is your job when you network is to kind of work the room and have a quick conversation with someone to find out who they are, what they do, who they work with, and who they serve. If that matches up with what you do and who you are, and that they know those people, there's a strong connection, along with the chemistry and the good fit. And so once you're focused in on less, on just kind of randomly networking and kind of working a room and meeting people and meeting the realtors and meeting the mortgage lenders, not so many of those these days that are out networking, but you look at the people that are networking, you want to try to find people that serve the same target market you do. So you've got to be prepared with maybe 3 or maybe 4 questions as you network, that it's not so much for you to tell somebody what you do, because I hate to kind of break this to you, but when you're networking, nobody really cares what you do. Is that harsh? Nobody cares about you, all right? Even if you, and there's all this talk and all of these training programs that I'm sure many of you have been through, and I've been through a ton of them, where they talk about, you know, crafting your 30-second elevator speech. Have you been down these roads before? Where you have to be clever and brilliant, and you have to dumb it down to 2 sentences or less, that people are just automatically going to go, oh, I want that, right? Who's ever said, when you've had that kind of conversation, they go, oh, I want that? Rarely, right? So this is, again, a different conversation for you to have, is to think less of you focusing on being clever, brilliant, and having the kind of like cute little 1 or 2 liners. What you want to focus in on is what the other person does, what they're all about, and you determine if there's potential for you or not, because then you control the scenario. So your networking now becomes you trying to find the right people and the right fit. But you also want to ask yourself, are you going to the different networking events where you're going to find good strategic partners? I mean, let's back up a minute and talk about a Chamber of Commerce meeting. At a Chamber of Commerce, you have got quite the variety of different professionals, and maybe not so good professionals, that go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting. Would you agree? You might meet a realtor. You might meet a pet sitting business. You might meet someone who works in corporate America for a large organization. You might look at someone in transition who's looking for a job. And so part of the challenge of networking is for you to ask yourself, are you networking at places where there's a target-rich alliance environment for you? I mean, are the people that sell or provide products or services to the same companies you target, are they networking at the same places you're going? If not, then the question becomes, should you be networking there? And we'll do a quick little exercise because I know I only have an hour. You guys need to get out of here at 9. Will you give me when I'm 5 minutes out before I need to wrap up? Okay. Okay, so on the target market, ask yourself, are you networking in the places where people that serve the same market are with you? Here's a little exercise I want you guys to go through. So it's so great that you guys are at tables together, because one of the things about building strategic alliances is for you to be a little crafty, a little strategic, and make sure that you're thinking about the different types of partner categories that you're trying to build relationships with. And this is one area that if you do one thing, because here's the sad part of what I know as a speaker, I'm going to be talking for an hour, and of the 100% information that I'm sharing, you guys are going to walk out the door and remember 10% of what I talk about. This is the 10% I really want you to focus in on. And this is one thing that you can do differently in your business today, which is to focus in on the types of business relationships as categories of people that are high potential for you to find and build a partnership with. And I'm going to give you the example here of a banker, because it's like, as a commercial banker, I always like to unpack my past and my background. But as a commercial lender, I wish when I was in banking that somebody had walked me through, if I had built a relationship with a payroll provider, which I did, a really good CPA, looky there, commercial real estate broker, nice, huh? Commercial real estate broker, a business attorney, a business broker. I mean, I was in a situation as a commercial lender where what I saw is businesses were growing, businesses were starting, businesses were downsizing, they were looking for lending, whether they were looking to build or grow their business, or whether they were looking for, to be able to kind of like tell me about their business because they were looking for more financing. So I had a variety of scenarios that I would see with my business clients. And so these are the types of professionals that when I heard some of the pains, the frustrations, the challenges of the companies I worked with, I would hear when there might be more than one owner to a company and there was some partner friction. And so I had a great insurance provider that did, Keyman insurance is what it's called, and I would bring them in and say, you might want to think about having this insurance policy in place, because I guess I get the sense that there's some issues between the partners, and so you might want to think about this as just protection, for the partners. And again, these were different relationships. So what I want you guys to do, and you only get 5 minutes, this is a chance because I know you guys like to talk, right? Yay! Is I want you guys to get together on you 3, you 4, you back 4, you 3, and then you 3, okay? You're going to be in small groups, and what I'd like you to do, I hope all you guys have paper and pen, is I'd like you to talk to each other, okay? I was like, oh wait, paper and pen? This was a workshop, right? I'm just checking, right? Okay, pen, work, right, there you go. What I'd like you to do is have a conversation among each other, and I want you each to come up with 5 different types of business professionals that you think are high potential types of businesses for you to interact with, and then we're going to come back and we'll talk more about it, okay? So I'll give you guys 5 minutes to do this.
As a group or individually?
Individually, but talk as a group. So each of you should have 5 categories I want you to have. And I'll come around it now. Ladies, this is what you guys really love, is the talking part, right? Because you get to interact and talk, okay. But I got to keep going so I wrap up on time. So I just was curious with the feedback. Anybody, now I saw a light bulb go off here. What is your first name? Beverly, so share with me what you came up with, because you were struggling with, how do I do this? What are we looking for? And it looks like you have a list now.
Well,
so,
I don't have a big list, but I have a little bit more of
You don't want a big list, little list.
Yeah. Well, we're an environmental company, and so I'm sitting next to Katie, and Katie's a civil engineer. Works with the civil engineering company, so we kind of found out, well,
Ding!
yeah, we might be able to work together. So,
Love it. Were there other people then that you kind of came up with as types of businesses that you think are good power partners?
well, we could definitely work with commercial real estate brokers, I believe.
Okay.
We do environmental site assessments and other things like that. So, but there's an awful lot of different things that we do. So the list could be long, depending on, because I'm sorry, Lena works for an interior design company, and we do have the potential to possibly work with her because we do mold abatement
And so if they were renovating something,
Yeah.
we could possibly come in and maybe do that. So the lists are kind of endless.
And this is that's what's fabulous about this, is that for every single one of you, I really only want to see about 5 or 7 categories. How about at the back table? I know, Kelly, your group, did anybody kind of have maybe some new potential types of categories you weren't thinking of?
I like yours that you just came up with.
Oh.
Share.
This is so random, and I don't know how I figured it out, except for I've.
It's because you're smart. You're
watched
smarty
talk to
pants.
Everybody, so it's just I stumbled upon it.
Okay.
We have the same gentleman who has been watering the plants in our office for 15 years, and as silly as it sounds, I mean, this guy knows everything going on because he's in offices every
Yeah,
day.
he hears.
He walks in CFO's offices. I mean, you've seen him. They come in, they just open the door.
Yeah.
You know, they walk in, and I've gotten leads from him in the last year. a couple.
Wow.
Because he'll be, and it's, you know, he's not giving out like proprietary information, but he'll say, I was in so-and-so's, you know, office as CFO, and I heard him say that they need to hire more.
Oh
they can't
my
put one more
God, that's
person in the
awesome.
office, and I do business development for tenant reps, so we only represent
Right.
companies. And I'm like, who knew?
Ding, ding.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just dialed in because he's done the same thing for 15 or 20 years in San Diego.
And I
he
got,
knows everybody.
here's a question for you now. Have you done any sort of reciprocal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see something in your client relationships and who you work with that you've been able to say, hey, you need my landscaping guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Internal landscaping guy.
Yeah. So
I
was
love
like,
it.
The plant guy, who would have thought, eh? I mean, but
AKA the plant guy. I love that. All right. So he's your BFF. I love it. But this is one thing that you've got to think about, is that, again, it's like networking will change for you when you look at it from the standpoint that networking is about building partnerships and relationships with people that like that. And here's the other thing about the plant guy. We'll use him. We will unpack the plant guy this morning. But with the plant guy, you've got to ask yourself, how often and how frequent do you interact? Because in a minute, we're going to shift from you identifying who you want to go after to how you develop those relationships, because it doesn't just happen. You've got to continue to keep in touch. You've got to interact. You've got to bring value. You've got to keep in touch. I mean, there's so many things you've got to do that if you have these kind of relationships, they need to be, number one, condensed, no more than 10. I mean, I always like to say start with 5. That's why you guys have a good 5 list. Now we're going to move into how you develop the relationship. So if you've got your list, let's talk about now how you kind of like build this partnership. The plant guy was doing you a favor. Man, what a gift, right? That he was seeing, he's got his ears to the grindstone for you. Now, how do you return the favor? How do you, once you've identified who your relationships are, now what do you do? So developing the relationship, again, I just want to remind you, it's a two-way street. That's why I was asking you, it's like, okay, the plant guy's giving you introductions. What are you doing for him? So how have you looked out for him, and how have you brought him value based on him hearing about the CFOs and what they're doing?
yeah, when we move tenants all the time, so I just say, you know, hey, just so you know, we're moving this person from this building to that building, and oftentimes, you guys know, when companies move, they typically start to reevaluate who their vendors are.
Yeah. Bye,
And,
Tiffany.
and so it's a good way for him, if he doesn't have the business, to introduce himself, and I always send an email and say, hey, we've been using him forever, and he's great.
And what a recommendation, and that's a gift to him. So that's perfect. That's a great thing. And the two-way street has to be there. So something you want to consider is that relationships just don't happen over time. I mean, Tiffany, who's left now, was saying that she likes to build relationships, and she doesn't want to make it all about the kind of like the bump, the meat, and then it's like, boom, you're supposed to bring value. Because one of the things I hear most from sales professionals and business development folks is they'll share with me, it's like, I met with somebody, you know, we talked about how great each of us were, we shared our information and who we are and what we do, and nothing. Well, it doesn't happen that way. I mean, people are like an onion. You got to kind of peel back the layers, get to know them a little bit. Takes a little time to do that. Takes more than just a couple of dances to build the relationship. So time and patience are what's going to be important to develop those kinds of relationships. In addition, you know, this is the other thing that's like, or some of the things I hear when people network and they try to build partnerships, is they say, well, we met and nothing happened. And you know, if you want to have opportunity brought to you through introductions, like with this plant guy, I mean, this was like one of those gems that you go, thank you, Lord, right? Thank you, God. But on the same token, you've got to make it your job to educate, to inform, to kind of plant little seeds of opportunity to make it easy for people to introduce you. If you aren't clear about how someone can help you in terms of here's what you should look at, Here's what you might see. Here's what you might hear, right, with the plant guy. What's the conversations that this dude is hearing that you could share with other types of potential partners that you could inform them to say, here's when it's a good time to recommend me or endorse me. Wow. I mean, that changes the model because this is your job, and most people will look at, I get referrals and I get introductions by accident. Or my favorite is you meet people, you network, you have a cup of coffee, you have lunch, it was a nice meet and greet, but you weren't strategic in what you were sharing or asking as far as information. So you have got to make sure that you're giving people and coaching them without it sounding like you're instructing them, to tell them this is a good time of what you might want to hear. Here's how you can support me, but there's the vice versa. Of course you're going to sit down and say, what can I do for you? What can I look out for? Who's your target market? This is the conversation that you want to have with strategic alliances. This is what you're going to ask. When you sit down with somebody, the more organized you are at building relationships, and again, I'm more than happy to send this to you guys because I know a lot of you are kind of kicking back and going, I'm not taking notes. So if you'd like the PowerPoint, I'll share. But these are the questions to think about sharing. Number one, you want to be able to ask a potential power partner, what situations can I look for that will tell me it's a good time to bring you in? Or when is it a good time for me to see something of when I can recommend you? I mean, especially, and tell me your first name again with the plant guy. What's your first name? Courtney. So in your scenario, you know, when you're talking to the plant guy, I would imagine when you see people getting ready to move and they're kind of reevaluating what their new commercial location will look like, understanding that would be a great time to be able to say, I know, have you ever thought about internal plants or, you know, kind of landscaping your inside commercial location? I mean, wow, what an opportunity to be able to recommend the plant guy and vice versa. He's kind of like your intelligence broker. Breaker, 911, here's a lead for you. Yeah, we do, just now everybody knows, so don't ever say who the plant guy is, but yeah, that's a great relationship to have, by the way. So here's some other things to kind of ask when you're looking to build partnerships is what do their customers struggle with? You know, by understanding what they struggle with, you can keep your eyes and ears open. Maybe you overhear that with some of your client relationships. When Kelly said earlier, the pains, the stress, the panic over going into a new building, buying a building and moving in, or any sort of moving, which is based on all of your industry, those are a lot of stressors. And those could be a lot of different service providers because people are always, when they move, looking to be able to get new infrastructure, right? They might be buying new furniture. They might be looking for modular work. They might be looking for design work. They might be looking for design work. They might be looking for any sort of tenant improvements going on from a construction or build standpoint. Maybe they're looking for telephone connections and technology and IT and networking. There's so many different things that happens when a company moves. I don't know if you guys realize, but just right now with the cone, you have a lot of power in what you guys see based on what companies are doing in your chosen profession. So if you can understand what other providers are looking for, this is where they can start to maybe bring you opportunity. But these are the questions you ask of the other party. And then here's my favorite part, is you get to say, and vice versa. This is the goal when you sit down with somebody and get to know them, is you want to be able to take the power position and ask them questions. Who are they? Who do they serve? What are the pains and frustrations of their customers? How can you look out for them? But this is my favorite part about building strategic alliances, is sometimes you sit down with people, and I hear this with a lot of my clients, is they'll say, I sit down, I start asking them questions, and then we've run out of time. And I don't get to say what they can do for me. So you've got to think in your timing that the vice versa part is make sure to structure your questions in such a way so that you get the opportunity to be able to say, and vice versa, so now here's what I'm looking for. And you've got to be ready and organized for this. I rarely see people that do this, but when you sit down with someone, you might even have a document that's ready. I have a little form that it's like I work with clients on. When I sit down with somebody, I say, here's what to look for, here's what you might hear, here's what you might see. This is a great opportunity to bring me in. And I have different scenarios for it, but when you sit down, you want to share this with the other party and say, here's what you can do for me. These are the trigger events to look for. If somebody even talks about the idea that they're thinking of moving, I would love to be able to be introduced to have a conversation. What are those situations or occurrences that somebody else could be your eyes and ears for, like the plant guy, that he could overhear and be like your reconnaissance that says, hey, you need to talk to you. So you've got to educate that person on these things. What kind of concerns, frustrations, and worries might they hear about from the people they serve? And again, if this is somebody that has a similar target market to you, this person can be your best ally because now you're being more strategic, you're being more quality focused, and you've got somebody who's got your back and you've got theirs. It's just a different way to network because this is where the long-term relationships come. In wrapping up, okay, what I want you to think about is that not every referral partner is going to bring you value. Some people will attempt. Some people are going to be those kind of just gems that they will have your back, like AKA the plant guy. I hope that's not his business name, but we'll just keep it there. But with the plant guy for Courtney, I would say that he's probably in a relationship. Would you agree? He continually listens. He has provided you reconnaissance information. You found value from it because you've gotten new business from it. So in my mind, he goes to the top of the list. There are certain relationships. When you think of your customer relationships, most people can say, these are my best customers, these are my middle of the road customers, and these are kind of those one-shot wonders. The same thing applies to referral relationships, is you've got to give some consideration that if you only have 5 or 7, only really 1 or 2 people are probably going to be your A relationships. Others are going to attempt, they might have high potential, but either the relationship hasn't been built yet. Part of your job as a professional is to make sure that you're kind of having a visual that not every relationship is created equal, and you want to give time and provide your face time and your time in terms of talking to people, that every single relationship doesn't really cause you to sit down and have a cup of coffee or lunch with them. You can keep in touch in different ways. And so one of the things I always recommend to clients is ABC your referral relationships. Give a C rating to people that have high potential, but they've never attempted to refer you. A B relationship for somebody who has maybe attempted to send you business, but it hasn't happened, or maybe it was only one time. And the A's are the people that you just feel there's a huge bond, you've got a great rapport. Those are the people that you're going to spend more time with. One of the things I'm going to do as a door prize is I've got one of my books, and these are available for today for sale if anybody's interested. I wrote a book a couple years ago called How to Build a $1 Million Database, and it's all about how you prioritize the people that you keep in touch with and connect with, and how do you kind of organize them so that you're being more strategic and having more of a system to building relationships. Because it's not about just going out there, and what I see with a lot of business professionals, they go, they network, they have all these business cards with those little rubber bands around them that are sitting all over your desk. Does anybody have that? Right? You go network, or you have them in envelopes. I see people with little like stacks of cards, little rubber bands around them, and they're all over their desk. Kelly has them in her purse. Okay. There's a stack. Do you got more? Can you bring out more for us?
Another one, but I put it out on my deck.
I love it. So you are the poster child of what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
This is where networking doesn't work, right? If you're networking, you've got to go through those cards and say, who's potential based on the type of business. Don't waste your time with the possibles. Waste your time on the targeted ones. And that's where when you look through that stack of cards, you're going to go through those cards and you're going to say prospect, which probably is very close to 0 in many cases. And then the other kind of like list that you'd go through, and you're going to mark them and say, where are their high potential referral partners for you to build a relationship with? That's where you spend your time. Those are the people that go in your database. And it's probably going to be 5 to 7 of those business cards. And then all the others are like, might happen someday. So don't worry about those. We don't need more stress, am I right? I'd rather have less stress in my life. Thank you very much. So you want to ABC those relationships, and then you're going to keep in touch in this way. Staying top of mind is your main goal. So you want to, after you've started to identify who those partners are, now you've started to be thinking about those categories. Now you've rated those relationships. And again, not enough time today, but it's like, you know, for the book, if you want more ideas on how to do that, I would love for you to get the book. One-time connections don't cut it. So you've got to be thinking that over a period of time, you've got to make sure with AKA the plant guy, that you've got to make sure that you're keeping in touch, because what if he forgets about you? He's still doing his plants, he's doing his landscaping, inner landscaping, and if you don't keep in touch and make sure you're connecting with him on a regular basis, not like what most people do now when they think of, I'm going to stay in touch, is you're going to stick somebody into your email marketing follow-up, and they're going to get their newsletters from you. And don't you think they're excited when they get that from you? Ooh, how many of you guys open up every newsletter you get now? This person is not buying from you. You've got to have a different communication with your referral relationships. Your job is to make a phone call, shoot out a quick personalized email once in a while, and say, I was just thinking of you, we haven't talked in a while, let's reconnect. It can be really brief and very kind of breezy and all that, but you can't think that one time you sat down and had a cup of coffee and lunch, or maybe even a couple of them, that it's going to work. You've got to make sure that you're nurturing those relationships. One of the things, again, part of the 10% that I hope you walk away with is I want to make 2 points. Because I used to own a corporate gift business for 9 years, which is how I was involved in Crew years ago. And I would always deal with sales professionals who would say, I've got this huge prospect or this person who's a referral partner, and they're going to send me business, and I want to send them a gift. A gift. And I'm thinking inside my head, I'm going one word, bribe. That's not how you build relationships. And so a point I want to make is that what you want to think about in referral relationships is that you are going to recognize behavior, but you're going to reward results. So on the focus of building relationships, you want to recognize anytime someone makes an attempt to send you business or talk you up or make a recommendation, that's the time when you want to send a card. Even today, it's absolutely okay etiquette-wise, because we all don't have enough time, and sometimes we don't have people's addresses anymore, is you want to shoot a little email and just say, hey, thanks so much for thinking of me, got a call from so-and-so. I mean, at least recognize the behavior. But if somebody tries to send you business, there's a lot of books and things that talk about, oh, send them a gift. You know, send them a basket or chocolates or whatever, which is what we used to see at the corporate basket. But that's not the right time to do that, because in some instances that could be looked at as bribery, right? So if someone does make an attempt to send you a referral, or the plant guy sends you a lead and you close business, now you want to go back and reward the behavior and reward the results from it and say, oh my gosh, I met with so-and-so, we closed business, can't thank you enough. This is the time now maybe to send something, take them to lunch, have a little more FaceTime. But that is absolutely rewarding what the results were, and it makes more sense in building relationships. And I've found over time, that's like over the 20 years I've been working with professionals, it changes things when you can just send a little shout out to say thank you for the behavior, even though it didn't work out, because you want them to keep doing it. So the other part that's important is how you organize your relationships in your database. And again, we talk about those ABCs, but for most of you, I would imagine you have an in-house company sort of database or CRM, customer relationship management program, or if you use Outlook, that's another great one. But I'm a big believer that it's like, you know, little pieces of paper and notes and folders are how we used to keep track of our relationships. But today, if you put little notes and you can kind of jot information about when you've connected last with somebody, what the conversation was, you've got to organize your referral relationships just like you do your customers and prospects. When you're going out and calling on somebody and they're thinking of whatever your service is that you provide under commercial real estate, you probably take notes, you jot down, it's like what the party is looking for, you know, maybe some different kind of specifics that you got to do a quote on. The same thing applies to referral relationships, is that you've got to take notes and keep track of what the other party is looking for. I have some clients that will take manila folders and they will have their referral partners, because again, it's not hundreds, it's maybe 10 or 11 that they have referral partner information on, and they have notes within manila folders that they can go to, because your brain can't remember this. You've got to be a good referral partner and note or put this information in your database. So that's one of the things that you can kind of keep track of who they referred, when they referred. It's a little bit of documentation tracking, but this helps you be more organized, because once you kind of put those things down of how you can refer, you're going to hope that you can reconnect with other people and say, hey, the last time we spoke was X. Thank you so much for referring so-and-so. And I just wanted to kind of check in because we haven't talked in a while. Just wanted to see if there's anything I can do for you. And from that conversation and that keeping in touch, now you're organized. You sound like you have it all together, which we all do, right? We all have it all together. So from that standpoint, it's like you're more organized and you can keep track of who you know. This is how often you should recommend it. Keep in touch with people. I mean, you want to be thinking, again, back to the ABC referral relationships. I personally believe, and I've seen people change their business, that when they focus on their A relationships, there needs to be at least a monthly communication. AKA, Courtney, plant guy, you got to be communicating with that guy at least once a month. What can I do for you? How's it going? Is there anything else I can do? And oh, by the way, remember to keep sticking your nose to the ground and ears to the wall, because you are doing a great job of referring me. That should be the conversation Courtney has every single month with plant guy. Now, the B's, because again, they're just not as important, but B relationships, people that might have sent you business once, they have tried and attempted, on the referral side, quarterly follow-up. And again, this is not your e-newsletter. This is not your communication that you send out to people that may be the company-approved newsletter. The follow-up, the quarterly kind of follow-up I'm talking about is making a phone call, doing a little email communication, personal, one-to-one through your Outlook or whatever you're using, to be able to say, hey, we haven't talked in a while, just wanted to touch base, how's it going? And you're going to wait for it. They're going to be like, why are you calling? Because you're just touching base, and people just kind of freak out about that, right? Because they're thinking, what are you selling? And you've got to kind of prepare for the idea that building relationships means you've got to connect and keep in touch and follow up with people and continue to keep yourself top of mind, not just with email marketing, but the C folks, which the people that might have potential. These are the people that maybe you do put in your email marketing, and then maybe every 6 months you say, hey, we haven't talked in a while, maybe it's time to have a cup of coffee. I just think there's potential for us to refer to each other, but we haven't done it, or we haven't gotten to that point yet. Maybe we could meet again. Now it makes sense for you to get together with those folks because you're trying to nurture and grow that kind of relationship. But again, this becomes kind of part of a business plan and strategy. I have at the point of this presentation either scared the living daylights out of you guys, thinking I don't have enough time to do this, and then you're telling me I have to manage all my referral relationships. But I will tell you guys that some of the people I've seen, including myself, because I really make a strong commitment that I love to connect people, but I really focus on referral relationships of that kind of model of 5, 7, or 9 strong people that it's like I interact with on a regular basis, and I've rated them. It changed how I do business. I've had clients who have done a 20% increase, and in some cases 30 or 35% more, because now they're focused on the right kind of professionals and not just running amok, networking for fun and social, which you can do that too, trust me. But if you're looking to get more value in building partnerships and relationships, this can be a very strong model that your networking can work so much more effectively for you as opposed to just going and having a good time, which I'm a big believer in whining. So I don't know if any of you whine, but I whine on a regular basis. Kelly knows, we've been at events before, and it is a great way to do it, but I'm always looking when I interact and we move around a room. If I'm at a new event, we were at that funding one the other night. It was brief conversations to move along, 3 solid prospects for potential relationships from that event because, again, following this model. So who's excited and who's frustrated? Okay, what's your first name?
Tony.
Tony, okay.
I think also something to look at is while you're building a network and meeting more people and they're referring you and so on and so forth, if you follow something like this, you're also building your reputation.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to escape it when you have a good network. Everybody knows who you are, what kind of person you are,
Yeah.
how approachable you are, and so on and so forth. So it's to do it properly can affect your reputation. So
And you mean good or bad is what you're
good or
saying?
bad.
True.
You can't really escape it. I mean,
But here's
your online reputation. I mean, you can claim to be whoever you want online, but your reputation does, it's there. You can't escape it.
And one thing I'll say to that, I totally agree, Tony. And the other part too is when you get to be kind of that trusted advisor, and people will say, "Oh, you're a connector, you're well," then people are going to come to you and say, "I'd like to sit down with you because I would like to build a relationship with you." And again, the criteria is because you don't want to waste your time. And again, I'm not saying everybody's not important. I'm saying you need to be effective. You've got to focus on those people that might be important to you and vice versa. But you really want to avoid the people that call you up and will say, "Hey, I'd just like to meet you because I'd like to pick your brain." I love the brain pickers, right? And so you want to think, well, my consulting fee for that is, right? And that would be your next payment. You don't want to be mean, but you do have to kind of prioritize and qualify who you meet with. And it's okay to say, I'm swamped, I'm busy. It's like, if we could touch base, and I will tell you guys, one of the things that works very effectively, can we please touch base, call me 3 months out, because right now it isn't on my radar. I just can't meet right now, and people should be okay with that.
I asked if they're in the association and they'll be at the next event.
Invite them to Crew, there you go. I love that. Right, are you the membership director for Crew? I'm just joking.
Not yet.
Great strategy, I like it. Kelly, you had a comment.
Good question. And I would actually love to hear how you would handle this. Going back to you've got your strategic partners.
Mhm.
Say like we'll just call out IT because we know there's a bunch of really big cabling companies out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a strategic alliance with a cabling company, but now you're getting calls from 6 other cabling companies, hey, I'd like to become your strategic partner. How do you handle that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, this is, again, the same kind of scenario. I know a lot of payroll providers that they target you. CPAs, they come and bring you treats, and they call on you all the time. One of the things you want to think about is, and again, I'm going to preface this in a way that says, people come and go from professions. People come and go from companies. So I always think it's a good idea to have plan B, plan C of those relationships, not just one solid, because there's not always the right fit that fits all. And so when you think of those relationships, there might be, just based on the personality, the type of company, their target, maybe you have about 2 or 3 different relationships with cabling companies, because this one is very easy to work with. They deal with small businesses as opposed to more middle market firms that maybe this other type of referral relationship looks for this level, this type of company. So you can kind of qualify and have maybe a B and a C type of relationship, because trust me, that relationship will not be around forever. And you always want to be thinking, if you have one solid relationship with the cabling company, what happens if they go away? Then you got to start all over. So in my mind, you would want to have a second and a third, but maybe be thinking, and I hate this term, but I will say it, it's like, you want to think to kind of look at that not every client is always going to be referred to that strategic alliance. It's not only one. It might be 2 or 3 if that's a really strong power partner for you, to think about this one would be a better fit, personality, characteristics, who the person is that you're referring, what the personality of the vendor is, that the referral relationship. So I'd say maybe 2 or 3, but spread the wealth is a wrong term, because I've also met professionals who are like, well, okay, I referred you this last time, so now you're going to get it, and it doesn't work that way. You want to make sure you're the trusted advisor that says, I'm going to find the right fit for you, and so it might be one company versus another based on what you've kind of given a criteria for with them. Does that help? Awesome. Any other questions, ladies? Yes.
So
Angela?
I'm getting up to speed on LinkedIn.
Oh, which is fun, yes.
It seems lately like I'm getting inundated with requests from all these people that I don't know.
Right. I do.
And I hit ignore. What is there an etiquette? Is there like?
There is an etiquette. I mean, again, it's relative based on, no, it's a great question, because honestly, LinkedIn, okay, now what it's built for, and I'm going to kind of go back a few years. When LinkedIn first came in, I've done years and years of just saying, accept, 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 and some people I don't know, and I've got all these people in there now, and it's like I go, the goal of LinkedIn is that you want to know somebody that you're linking with, and that they know you. And when you get these requests from people that say, they don't have pictures, you don't know who they are, they just do the little kind of like, I'd like to add you to my LinkedIn thing. It's okay to maybe, some people will go back and say, how do we know each other? And interesting, if you want to spend that time. If you don't have that kind of time, you just ignore. Because really you don't need to accept them into your network. Because the idea is what's going to happen is you might get requests from people, because the idea of LinkedIn is if I go in and I look at who you know, and if I'm looking to meet that person in your network, then I'm going to reach out to you and go, Angela, can you make me an introduction? And if you don't know them, ding dong, how do you look then, right? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know them. And so it's very frustrating. I mean, you can find people on LinkedIn, you can get introductions to other people on LinkedIn, and it really is good protocol that you don't want to just accept anybody in LinkedIn. And I think a lot of us that have been around for a while, I'm going to put myself in this bucket, I have people I need to clean out, because I've gotten requests where people go, Michelle, you know somebody, but oh, by the way, I would love an introduction to him. And I'm going, I'm sorry, this was back from 2006 and I don't know him. So let me wrap up with this. I want to thank you guys for your time. It's like, I hope you got a couple of ideas on networking. I'm going to pass the plate because I'm begging. No, I'm just joking. I'll do 2 door prizes for my book. So if you guys want to put your card in there and be part of that, I'm going to answer any last questions you have and say thank you for having me come. But any last questions, and then I will be doing a door prize and skedaddling.
Great job. Thank you very much.